Women's Soccer Review Podcast with Duane Rollins and Jonathan Tannenwald on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Welcome to the latest episode of the Women's Soccer Review here on the Sports Podcasting Network. I'm Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer, hunkering down as a thunderstorm makes its way toward me out my window. Duane Rollins is here. Hello, Duane. How are you?
I'm doing well. Tracking planes in the air and looking at boats in the lake here in Toronto. So it's a nice day.
Nothing like the infrastructure of North American soccer without the actual soccer, is there?
Exactly. I really love looking at FlightAware all day to see if a flight takes off. But that's for a different league that we're not talking about today. Well, what we are talking about today is the NWSL, which is actually happening. So I'll tell you, take it away.
Right, indeed. And our guest from the other end of this same Commonwealth that I am in, we have stretched our tin cannon string out to Yinzer country, or as they would say in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia is Sodom and Gomorrah, and that's sort of the way things go in our neck of the woods. Rachel Kriger of Equalizer Soccer joins us. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I'm one of the very few Pittsburghers that isn't all riled up about Philadelphia, so you can find some solace in that. I'm not too much of a hockey, baseball type of person, so no fierceness here.
If there is hope for cooperation in this state, we might actually get somewhere someday. Who knows? But that is also for another show, as the saying goes. There were 4 games over the weekend. We'll review them. Then there are only 2 games midweek, as there will be games, I believe Wednesday, and then... Wednesday, and then there'll be 4 games next weekend. So we'll get to the weekend games in our next show. There are 2 games Wednesday, because it's the 4 teams playing Wednesday are the ones that did not play on the opening weekend. That came up because when the Orlando Pride withdrew, they had to blow up the whole schedule. So you ended up taking 4 games off the board that I believe were going to be, either Sunday the 28th, I know, and then I forget whether it was going to be this Tuesday or Thursday. I forget, but it was one of the 2. They took all those games off the board, so there's only going to be 2 games midweek, which means this show might be a little shorter than the last one. But let's get into the weekend, and we'll take the games in chronological order, as we usually do, starting with Utah Sky Blue. A 1-0 win for Utah, and there are concerns, Rachel, about Sky Blue, about their lack of creativity, their lack of attacking thrust. And I think those concerns are justified. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I think that Sky Blue is really, when they came out this off season with all of these different moves, I think it was more toward the future and planning towards the future, and just kind of picking up from last season some of the momentum they had and just trying like baby steps, if you will. But I think that there needs to be some help in the midfield, because I don't think Sarah Woldmo can just hold it down by herself. And most of the time she's running everywhere, scrambling, trying to figure out defense, midfield, offense. And I just think that is quite a bit for one singular person. So I think Sky Blue definitely needs some help. I don't know if it requires maybe shifting formations, adding some different players into the mix, but they need to figure out something. Although, the Challenge Cup is important, but it's not going to be, I guess, if you will, make it or break it type deal for Sky Blue. But I think if they want to show other teams, fans in the league that they are a different Sky Blue, then I think there needs to be a sort of shift.
And I think that, obviously there are continued calls to have Midge Purce play on the front line. I'm not convinced that alone is going to solve the problem at this point, for 2 reasons. One of which is we've clearly seen by now that there is a lot of overlap in Freya Coombs' system between the forward winger and the outside back. And I don't think Coombs is going to change the system just to get a result out of this thing. But I also worry about the center of midfield. And Naho Kawasumi is not going to be enough as the 10. And the logical answer to that is, well, we knew that already, and we did. But I think it still bears saying.
And I don't think we would be having this conversation if Caprice Didasco was healthy. And I think the whole reason that Midge Purce kind of is being slot into that left right back role is because of the injury. You know, it happened right before the Challenge Cup. I think a week or two before the Challenge Cup.
And they had Dorsey's out too, which doesn't help either.
Exactly. And it's just and Madison Tiernan too being out. It's just, there have been so many injuries to Sky Blue's defense that they are being forced, I guess, kind of against their will to shift these offensive players down into a more defensive position.
On the other side of the field, Utah's been playing a 3-5-2, and we've all sort of looked at it and said, really? And, you know, it also being Craig Harrington's debut as a head coach in the NWSL, and apparently this is how he wants to do it. And lo and behold, it's working.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, Amy Rodriguez is just amazing. Like, the fact that she is out of the national team picture right now and even last year is just astounding to me, because she is just such a rocket. She is an amazing player, and the partnership that she has with Vero Boquet is absolutely amazing. And, you know, we also have Vlatko Andonovski there with his little notebook, so hopefully he's making a note to bring in, or at least consider, Amy Rodriguez, because I think she's doing enough, and she did enough last year to kind of warrant that attention and warrant the praise that she should and is getting for her play with Utah, because she is just, not only is she the leader of this team, but she's the one who is, I guess, kind of making Royals fans and NWSL fans think for a minute. You know, not having Kristen Press in this tournament, it's obviously a bummer. Totally understandable that she is not playing in it. But, you know, it's kind of like the situation with Megan Rapinoe up in Tacoma. You don't really necessarily exactly need her. Last year, Reign made the playoffs without her. She only played 5 or 6 games. And then, you know, this year with Press being out, Utah's still firing on all cylinders on offense. So it's like, you know, they're great to have, but do you need them exactly? Not quite.
I have a hard time seeing Rodriguez come back into the national team picture. If for 2 reasons. One is, as Vlatko said on TV in his interview with Marissa Pilla, we have no idea when the national team's going to get back together, and it could be a while. And relating to that, he clearly wants to go young. And look, I'm thrilled that Rodriguez is having this renaissance. It's been a joy watching Vero Boquet play so well in this tournament. Those are 2 players who, as I've said a few times, played here in Philadelphia a decade ago for the Philadelphia Independents under Paul Riley, made 2 title games in the old women's professional soccer era. And my gosh, if he had Sam Mewis and Crystal Dunn back then, he might have actually won one of them. But I think the Royals, I don't want to say lucky. Lucky is the wrong word. It's great to see that Rodriguez has done this well, especially in Press's absence. She had to carry the load, especially out of the gate, when you weren't going to throw Ciara King right into the fire with a start. Although she might start this one. I don't know. She might start the next game if they want to rotate a little bit. We'll see. I'm thrilled for Rodriguez. I don't quite see her getting back to the national team, though. And I think it's a good thing if there are American players in the NWSL who are playing really well, who are veteran players who we know aren't going to come to the national team, because it means they've still got it, and it means there's still a lot of competition for those places in the national team squad. The late game was Houston. I said Houston-Tacoma on the last show, and I almost said it again here, didn't I? Sorry, folks. I'm probably going to keep making that joke down the road, I realize. The Houston-OL Reign. Houston won 2-0. And look, North Carolina obviously is the best team in the field. But in terms of the most interesting team of the tournament so far, that crown goes to the Dash for the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, the Dash are just so much fun to watch. And I think right now in the whole tournament, the Dash have the best player too in the whole tournament, and that's Shea Groom, because she has just like it's this crazy spark. You know, she was great last year with the Reign. She she had a couple injuries, but this year she's just, I mean, granted it's only been a couple games, but she has just been like on fire for Houston. I saw somebody had tweeted, I don't remember who it was, but Shea Groom has the best assist and goal in this whole tournament, and I'd have to agree too. But I mean, I'm kind of disappointed with OL Reign, because on paper they look like such a good team and they have a ton of talent. I know I've been super excited about Shirley Cruz being in the NWSL because I'm all about Costa Ricans in the NWSL. I have no affiliation to Costa Rica, so don't ask me why. But I've really been enjoying Shirley in the NWSL, but have been waiting to see what more she can do. And I know Farid Ben Sidi, when I was on his media call before the match, he had said, we want more out of Shirley Cruz. And I couldn't agree more, because she is that veteran leader with all of this European experience and a legend with her national team. But OL Reign is definitely been disappointing in a few ways, because like I said, on paper they look so talented, and I still stand by my sentiment of the fact that they don't necessarily need Megan Rapinoe, because they did so much without her last year, and they, with a half injured team, made it to the playoffs still. I don't know if we want to credit a lot of that to also Vlatko Andonovski and his leadership, but right now it's just not clicking for the Reign. And I mentioned this to Jeff Kassouf from the Equalizer. I said, it's bad when you totally forget that Bethany Balcer is in a game until they show her walking off the field at halftime, because she was so quiet in the game against the Dash, and the Dash defense just totally shut her down. And another tidbit that I thought was interesting in the match was watching two different players on defense going against former teams. Amber Brooks, now with Reign, used to play for the Dash for a long, long time. Megan Oyster, formerly of the Reign, now with Houston. And just the shift of kind of a new environment is showing to be positive for Megan Oyster, who was fantastic in the game and has kind of been that missing piece of the puzzle that Houston's defense needed. And for the Reign, I mean, Shea Groom was left completely unmarked inside the box, and it was Amber Brooks' space. So I don't know. It's just not clicking for the Reign right now, but the Dash are super fun to watch. And, can't forget that goal from Christy Muse as well, with gorgeous backheel pass from Shea Groom.
In looking at what the Reign have and what they don't, I still think they're really missing Sofia Huerta. They're just missing a little bit of, not so much the engine room. They have that in midfield. They're just missing someone who can cut an opposing defense open a little bit and get the ball up there for the forwards. And that, I think, is what is missing. And at this point, I don't know when she's going to play.
If she even plays in the tournament, there's a lot of players like her that, either have maybe strain themselves a little while training. I know there's issues with the turf. We saw Ali Watt go down with an ACL. We see that Becky Sauerbrunn isn't coming back after playing in one game. So I'm nervous that we're not going to see her, and that's something that I really wanted to see, because I want to see that connection with her and with Bethany Balcer, with Ali Long, and with Shirley Cruz. So I'm hoping she can come back.
Duane, how about you take us through the Sunday games?
Of course, and we'll start with that early game. North Carolina 1-0 over the Red Stars. Took 81 minutes. For a lot of fans that aren't from North Carolina, I think that their second favorite team in this tournament is Team Not the Courage. Was there a little bit of hope there that we might see something modeled by the Red Stars later on, or someone else to defeat this juggernaut that seems undefeatable by the way the Red Stars played that game?
That's a good question. I think that the match was... Could you dumb down the question a little bit for me? I'm going to be totally honest with you. I'm not the best with words.
With the way the Red Stars approached the game by playing in the lower block and trying to get ahead and maybe nick something, was there enough there that you saw that you think the Courage can be taken down?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good sign to have a team hold the Courage, hold the Courage scoreless for a majority of the match. What Abby Erceg scored in like the 81st minute or something like that. So it's definitely a good sign. And what I liked about Chicago too in that game was, some games when you see people playing against the Courage, it's let's just sit back and wait for them to attack us. And Chicago was like, no, we need to push ahead. We need to block them in the midfield. North Carolina's midfield was a little shaky at times, to be honest with you, which is something I never thought I would have to say. But I definitely think that there are some tidbits that teams can take away from Chicago's performance. I think crowding the midfield and not just sitting back and so far below and waiting for the Courage to come at them was a good sign. Somebody wrote about it recently over at Equalizer for us. I think the way to beat the Courage is to play like the Courage. And it's obviously easier said than done. But the Courage have had a couple games in this tournament now where it's come down to the final 10, 15 minutes to get a result. So I don't know if that's a sign of anything, but I think it's interesting that these late game winners are the reason why the Courage are gaining these points. So, but to answer your question, yeah, I think Chicago not playing with a super defensive mindset was a good call for them.
You mentioned the Courage have a couple later goals to win these games. Do you think that's just a reflection of the extra subs and their superiority with depth?
Yeah, I mean, Courage definitely have the best depth, arguably, in the NWSL right now. And I think that, I don't remember which game it was exactly, but at halftime, they had brought on Mewis and Dunn or somebody like that. And I mean, those are some pretty good names to have off of the bench. So I think that, and North Carolina's younger players too. Ryan Williams had a really good game, I thought, on defense. I think that there are definitely some new players that are getting their feet wet, but Paul Riley wants victories. He wants points, and if push comes to shove, if he needs to get those veteran players in there to kind of get things moving and get things to be more fluid, then that's what he's going to do.
All right. Before I move to the final game, do you see them being stopped in this tournament? Do you see North Carolina losing a game the rest?
To be honest with you, I thought that the only team that was going to beat North Carolina would have been the Washington Spirit, and that didn't happen. So I would say no. I think that if we would get a competition between the Dash and the Courage in the quarterfinals or whatnot, I think that could be a lot of fun and really interesting to see. But I don't know exactly if the Courage can be taken down. I still think they're arguably the favorite to win.
Fair enough. And well, you mentioned the Spirit, so that segues nicely to the final game. Hell of a first goal. Would you think that was something they worked on, or was that just improv'd brilliantly at the time?
I think that's just, Lindsey Horan being Lindsey Horan, to be honest with you. I think Megan Klingenberg is never, she's not the first person to come to mind when I think of people who create chances on set piece plays. But she is definitely, showing people throughout this tournament that she can not just defend, but she can also provide on offense too. And she had a great ball to Horan, and Horan just, demolished it. And she, I mean, for someone that, the national team has said that, they have people there on the ground to kind of help limit the minutes and take care of national team players and people who are on the bubble. I think I've been surprised with how much Horan has been playing in this tournament. But clearly, with all of the injuries that Portland has, Sophia Smith and Becky Sauerbrunn, of course, I think that she's needed in these games. And, we saw the frustration with Christine Sinclair being taken off early in the second half and Lindsey Horan staying on for, the whole game. So I think that it's interesting to see her play as much as she is, but she is I think it's nice to see her fully focused with the NWSL and with her club team, all of these national team players who don't have to worry about a call up during the middle of the season or whatnot. So I think she's really clicking with Portland right now, and she's kind of wearing, not right now, because I mean, she's always been good with Portland and she's always been consistent. But I think she's wearing a ton of different hats because she is really the big veteran presence along with Sinclair for this team.
We talked a lot about Portland on the last show, so maybe we'll move on to Washington to finish our conversation here before I let Jonathan close out. You mentioned that on paper, a lot of people had sort of slotted them as perhaps the team that might be able to take down North Carolina. I don't know if they're firing on full cylinders yet. What was your takeaway from their performance last night?
I thought it was good. I thought Washington was playing too much out of the back, but overall, I thought the whole game was a battle of goalkeepers between Bella Bixby and Aubrey Bledsoe, and Aubrey Bledsoe started, really shining in that second half. But I think that for as being young as a team as they are, I think it is clicking for them. And even though, it took them a while to find the back of the net, they were building up good plays. I was really impressed with Kumi Yokoyama in the game. She had really, really good chances. And, everyone thought Paige Nielsen scored that goal because she was the one more exuberant about celebrating. But Sam Staub's goal was really good. And I mean, that flick from Ashley Sanchez is going to be talked about for the rest of the tournament. It was absolutely it could contest with Shea Groom for the best assist of the tournament. But I think Washington has been doing well in this tournament. I think that, they kind of got a little blow by North Carolina. And I think drawing with Portland, a, first team Portland group, is a pretty good result.
Fair enough. I'll let Jonathan, if you want to set up or add anything, or if you want to set up the games on Wednesday for us. Jonathan, you're on mute.
Whoopsie. Wrong button. Thought I was on mute, hit the button, and it went in the wrong direction. Happens sometimes. Live radio, as the saying goes, right? I want to mention about Washington, too. We should say that Rose Lavelle didn't play the first half, and I think that might have been part of why they took things a little slower in those first 45 minutes. I actually think that Chicago is the team that can beat North Carolina. As strange as that may sound, and even though they don't have Sam Kerr, I think it would only be 1-0. But I think they can do it because I think they've got the defensive solidity and just the right ways to jam North Carolina. And then the question becomes, do they have enough on the attack to nick one at the other end? And can Kealia Watt and some of the other players up top hit the finish, hit the first-time shot that they maybe didn't always take in that game over the weekend? And yes, that Ashley Sanchez backheel flick on the equalizing goal for Washington was ridiculous and the sort of thing that hopefully will get people paying attention to this tournament beyond just the core women's soccer fan base. And by the way, I should mention one other thing. Why those of you who listen to the Women's Soccer Review are making the right decision and are smart consumers. We said on the last show that Rose Lavelle probably wasn't going to start. And lo and behold, we were right. Let's take a look at the midweek games coming up, which might not have much besides places in the standings to offer, unfortunately. But nonetheless, Utah against the Reign. I wonder if Ziara King might make her first start in this game. I don't know. I bet right once, so I might as well take a portion of my proverbial winnings, and they're not actual winnings, unfortunately. But I wonder if Ziara King might start this game, and I wonder what kind of rotation the Reign might do. And I think as these things go, I'll probably say that Utah's the favorite to win. What do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, I definitely think Utah is the favorite to win. I'm intrigued to see if, for this game, because like you said, it's really only for standing purposes if Amy Rodriguez and Vera Boquette would get a little bit of rest, maybe come in at halftime or get taken out at halftime. But I think for the Reign, they need a win. I know everybody is very critical of saying, oh, well, nobody needs wins. It's the group stage. It doesn't really matter because all 8 teams are going through. But I think for confidence purposes, I think for more trust in Ben Steedy, I think that there needs to be a win in this game, or at least a draw that looks good. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I still think Utah wins, but I think that Reign could really, really use some help.
So the late game is Sky Blue Houston, and Houston's certainly the favorite. And I think that Sky Blue might need to win it. And the reason why I think they might need to win it is because their last group stage game is against North Carolina. And first round, sorry, it's not technically a group stage. Trip over that all the time. I don't want to call it a group stage because it's not. I think Sky Blue has to win this game because if they don't, their last first round game is against North Carolina. And then their game after that could be against North Carolina in the quarterfinals. And that would be that. So what do you think, Rachel?
Yeah, I think that Sky Blue needs to kind of figure out which people work together the best, even if that might result in, okay, well, who's been here longer, who knows each other already, to kind of create a connection on the pitch. But I think that it's another quote unquote must win game for Sky Blue in order to maybe find themselves a little bit more favorable when it comes to seeding and deciding the bracket for the quarterfinals in the knockout rounds. But I'm excited. I think it'll be a good game. I think it'll kind of be one of those, tell me if this makes sense or not, but one of those is Houston overhyped type of things, because if Sky Blue hypothetically gets a result, what does that mean for Houston now? What does that mean for all the conversation of how good they've been? So I think it'll be a game of what ifs, but I'm excited to see it. But I still think that my gut feeling is telling me Houston's gonna get a win.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Anything else you want to throw in before we call time?
I could really use a Shirley Cruz goal.
Yeah.
I would want a Shirley Cruz goal. I think that, this is tiny little rant about CONCACAF. I think that the NWSL should be looking for more players in CONCACAF, not just through Canada and through the United States. I think that there are very capable players from Costa Rica, Jamaica, Panama that could make the leap to the NWSL. And I know that there's only, 9 teams and there's going to be a 10th with Louisville next year, but I would love to see it a bit more opened up and more diverse, if you will.
I'd certainly be interested in that. And, certainly Bunny Shaw is going to be a name on people's minds, especially if Bordeaux which is having some tumult at the moment in the C-suite, the ownership and so on. If she ends up leaving there, I wonder if some NWSL teams might take an interest. And I don't know that she will, but I wouldn't rule it out. My wish, you had your one wish. Mine is that I could get to bed before 3 a.m. on one of these game nights. I'm a night owl by nature. But it does get to be a little bit much after a while, and certainly that is to take nothing away from the obvious and understandable reason why these games are so late, which is to get out of the heat in Utah. It gets real hot, and they're playing on artificial turf. And so that's why you have the official and even unofficial NWSL sun glare accounts popping up on Twitter all over the place. I should mention, by the way, that I'll give credit to Julia Poe of the Orlando Sentinel for coming up with this. She was on the show, obviously, a few weeks ago, as you all know. As she said, the devil works hard, but women's soccer fans work harder. And credit to Mike Watts, the play-by-play guy, for all these games on CBS All Access, for taking all these accounts in such good fun because it does look, we could all be more serious about this stuff, obviously, but it is enjoyable, to see Lisa Baird on the playground slide, and people having some fun with the farm and the sprinklers off the back of the stadium and so on. It's part of the fun of all this, and I think it does, as I've said before, bring a little more attention to this thing from people who might otherwise not be paying attention, because if it was all serious, sure, it would be good soccer, but I think the fun helps too. Rachel, thanks so much for coming on. And
thanks for having me.
For all your insight on the show. It is a busy day here at the Sports Podcasting Network for a whole lot of reasons, women's soccer and not women's soccer. So we're going to end it there. And I will say, for Duane Rollins and for Kevin Laramie, our producer, and for Rachel Kriger, our guest, this is Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer saying thanks for listening to the Women's Soccer Review here on the Sports Podcasting Network.